Are we doing this? But of course. All right, my babies. Non-functional requirements. How are we doing? How's the light? We manage, right? Non-functional requirements. Analysis examines the requirements of a solution that define how well the function that define how well the functional requirements must perform. It specifies criteria that can be used to judge the operation of a system rather than specific behaviors. All right, so functional requirements are behaviors, non-functional requirements are criteria. Uh, it's basically values, right? Like here, it's like that specific behaviors which are referred to as the functional requirements. What's the description? Well, non-functional requirements, also known as quality attributes. Quality. Okay, so quantity, functional is quantity, and non-functional is quality, or quality of service requirements, often associated with system solutions, but they also apply more broadly to both process and people aspects of solutions. They augment the functional requirement of a solution, identify constraints on those requirements, or describe quality attributes a solution must exhibit when based on those functional requirements. Full disclosure, man. They repeated everything here, man. They just wrote it in different. Again, like I don't know. I feel the only reason I'm reading it is because I promised I would read the whole fucking book, right? Because in a way, I got it, but what if I missed something? So I read it. Non-functional requirements are generally expressed in textual formats and declarative statements or in matrices. Uh, Text statements or matrices, as in like this, yes, tick, yes, no, yes, this, yes, maybe. Declarative non-functional requirements statements will typically have a constraining factor to them. For example, errors must not exceed X per use of the process. Transactions must at least X% processed be after 5 seconds, or the system must be available X% of the time, right? That's basically like no. What we're talking about is more the value and not the outcome. Like, how do you measure the value of the essence of something? I don't know. What are the elements? Well, the elements are availability, compatibility, functionality, maintainability, performance efficiency, a degree to which a solution or component performs its designated functions with minimum consumption of resources, portability, ease at which a solution or a component can be transferred from one environment to another, reliability, the ability of a solution or component to perform its required function under the stated conditions and for a specified period of time, right? Like, can we trust it or not? Scalability, a degree of which the solution is able to grow or evolve, security, aspects of the solution that protect solution content, usability, ease of which a user can use it. All of these are non-functional. Interesting. Certification, constraints of the yes, they're not functional because all of them are kind of like if an engineer basically like builds something, we can't operate on the assumption that people that are non-engineers can understand it. So the non-functional requirement of the basically like solution is to be explained a certain kind of way where somebody like who's not an engineer would actually do it, right? The localization requirements dealing with local languages, laws, currencies, cultures, spelling, and other characteristics of users, which requires attention to the context. Okay. Service level agreements, constraints of the organization being served by the solution that are formally agreed by both the provider and the user of the solution. Extensive service level agreements, constraints. Yeah. So like it's not a physical thing. And extensibility, the ability of a solution to incorporate new functionalities. Like is it adaptable? I guess or not? Is that what we're talking about? Not sure. Measurement of non-functional requirement. Non-functional requirements often describe quality characteristics in vague terms, such as the process must be easy to learn, or the system must respond quickly. But to be useful to developers or a solution and to be verifiable, non-functional requirements must be quantified whenever possible, including an appropriate measure of success provides the opportunity for verification. For example, a process must be easy to learn, can be expressed as 90% of operators must be able to use the new process or no more than 6 hours of training. So we can test that, right? A system must respond quickly can be expressed as the system must provide 90% of responses in no more than 2 seconds. A measurement of the other categories of non-functional requirements is guided by the source of the requirement. For example, a certification requirement are generally specified. Wait, measurement of the other categorized of categories of non-functional requirement is guided by the source of the requirement. Certification requirements are generally specified in measurable detail by the organization setting standard or convention such as ISO certification standards. And compliance requirements and localization requirements are set in measurable detail by their providers. They seem like they're very opinionated ones and biased. Like, if I want something in a certain kind of way, I have non-functional requirements on my own. An organization's enterprise architecture generally defines the solution environment requirements and specifies exactly which platform or other attribute of the environment is required. So context of non-functional requirements. The context. Depending on the category of non-functional requirements, the context may have to be considered. For example, a regulatory agency may impose context impacting the compliance security requirement. The market, for example, whatever you're trying to sell the product, whether it is you're working with finance, whether it is you're working with like farmers, right? Uh, that is expanding operations abroad may have to consider localization and scalability requirements, determining the optimal portfolio for non-functional requirements. The assessment in a given organization context is central to delivering value to stakeholders. The assessment of non-functional requirements such as localization or maintainability may impose contextual pressures or other functional requirements. For instance, regulations or resource in one jurisdiction may affect the maintainability of a solution in that region. What am I reading here? Regulations or resources in one jurisdiction may affect the maintainability of a solution in that region. So it may justify a lower performance efficiency or reliability measure of success than other jurisdiction. Yeah, so non-functional requirements are basically like they shift locally. Is that what they're trying to say? Context is dynamic by nature, of course, which means it shifts, it changes. It's a cultural thing as well. And non-functional requirements may need to be adjusted and removed outright. Business analysts consider the relative stability of the context when evaluating non-functional requirements. Ah, usage consideration. The strengths it states the constraints that apply to the functional requirements, provides measurable expression of how well the functional requirements must perform, leaving it to functional requirements to express what the solution. Limitations are clarity and usefulness. Again, like the biggest problem now that I'm looking at this, I'm realizing like the biggest problem startups have are not the functional requirements, are the non-functional requirements. Because you could always create a product, but the idea is how do you kind of like create it in a way that suits the consumer, and that's where a non-functional requirement kicks in because like the consumer is kind of like biased, it's subjective. It's gonna feel these things that you're not considering because ultimately it's a good product. The consumer is not willing to like connect with whatever you gave them. So a set of non-functional requirements may have inherent conflicts and require negotiation. For example, some security requirements may require compromises on performance requirements. It's true. Overly strict, like imagine you want to give people good service, but you also want to check every single person walking in if they have basically if they have a gun on them or not. So then basically they have to spend 10 minutes in line before they enter your space, and then you're trying to provide good service. So weirdly, so that kind of like fucks with everything, right? They contradict. Overly strict requirements or constraints can add more time and cost to the solution, which may have negative impacts. Many non-functional requirements are qualitative and therefore may be difficult to be measured on scale and may garner a degree of subjectivity by the users and how they behave in a particular requirement ultimately meet their needs. Amazing, right? Look at all this cuteness. Thank you very much, babies. Next is, which one was next? Observation.